Okay, so we are still on our research methods, and today we are still on our research methods, and today we are going to look into the strengths and limitations of different qualitative research methods, including unstructured interviews, semi-structured interviews, group interviews, overt and covert participant and non-participant observation. I think this one is really some serious explanation so that we cannot rush. So as of today, we are just going to look into two aspects from the couple that I've just listed. We are going to look into two aspects so that you can have the time to go through them and grasp them rather than doing them all. It's not really helpful to you. So last time we looked into qualitative research methods, right? So the qualitative, the opposite of qualitative, quantitative, is qualitative. So last time we were into what? Quantitative. So today we are into what? Qualitative research methods. So we are going to look into the unstructured interview and the semi-structured interview. So unstructured interview. So let me start with the unstructured interview as our starting point. It enables researchers to acquire an understanding of how people think and feel. Respondents are encouraged to talk freely about the things they feel are important. So it's like this is under qualitative data. So under qualitative information, this means that the information it's not quantifiable, it cannot be put in what? In numbers. This simply implies that when you are inquiring or when you are questioning the respondent, you must create an environment whereby they feel free to give you the information. So like I defined here, respondents are encouraged to what? To talk freely about things they feel are what? Are important. So let us rush into the strengths. Like the researchers' limited input means that data reflects the interest of the respondent. It is therefore more likely to be an accurate and detailed expression of their beliefs because of that. So it's like the researcher has sort of a limited control of the information that is going to come. The duty of the researcher here is to ask the questions. So the driver here, the person with the most vital information that we want is the interviewee or the respondent. And they are on the spotlight, they are being asked questions, and they have to answer them in a free manner, something like that. So allowing the respondent to talk freely in their own words, the problem of the researchers prejudging what makes important or irrelevant data too. So the researcher must establish a strong understanding with the respondents. That's why they usually do what they call pilot projects before they do the actual interview. Because you must have the spirit of empathy. You must understand the type of person you are questioning, so that you can at least be in their shoes. Yes. That's where we find out that journalism itself, like people must qualify to be journalists. Because now we have citizen journalists, we have random people. If a person just gets a certain podcast material or podcast items, then they turn themselves into a fly-by-night journalist, Journalism is whereby, proper journalism, whereby you go to a journalism school and you are taught the proper ethics of the field. So that you can know that when I'm inquiring a politician, I have to use this approach. When I'm inquiring a sex worker, I have to use this approach. When I'm inquiring a convicted murderer, I have to use this approach. So it is the onus or the prerogative is on the shoulders of the researcher to know the type of the interviewee, so that they can ask the appropriate question, so that they can also empathize with them, get into their shoes and try to understand why they are doing that. Yes. So if this is achieved, people who don't trust being studied can open up to the researcher, allowing sensitive issues to be explored in depth. If the researcher is relatively informal, it can take place somewhere the respondent will feel at ease, such as in their what? In their own home. Again, the issue of location is very important when interviewing someone. Because some might feel comfortable to give you all the nitty-gritties, even the finest details, even the most sensitive details, because they are comfortable in their home. But if you take them in a studio, you find out that some people will be dropping some comments in the comment section. They will be even saying this person is lying, we know this person. You see the issue of location. I think DJ Ola. It is because of environment they are created. Because by environment they are light yakadai. Once they can vura DJ Ola, big time. Interview. You get the sense? So the issue of locations and environment is also very important. You might ask me a certain issue here. I might not feel comfortable to answer it. Let's say you might ask me about my girlfriend. I might not feel comfortable to answer it because you are here. But if you go to my place privately there in Bali, I can share the information. So it is the duty again of the interviewer to understand. So there's a certain level of psychology that works around in terms of how you have to inquire people so that they can give you the appropriate information. You have to be in their shoes. I like this football coach called Jose Mourinho. So there's this, I think it's Prime TV or something, I forgot the name. They were shooting some private videos of his interactions with the coaching staff and the players when he was a coach, when he was still the coach at Tottenham. So he wanted to have him. He knew that this certain or this impending or this upcoming conversation with a certain player called Danny Rose, he was a left back, was going to be intense. So when he led him into the room, he didn't go and sit on his main chair because a football coach up there, they have an office, you know that. Yes, they actually have an office. So, you know, this big desk in an office and that chair like the ones we have in the staff room. So he didn't sit on that big chair. He knew that the conversation is going to be heated. So he didn't want to take the position of someone who is bigger than the player. He knew that he is bigger, yes, but he didn't want to appear as if he's bigger. And he knew that it was going to be a heated face-to-face confrontation. So there was a chair on the right side, a small chair on the right side of the what? Yes, on the right side of the of his desk. That's where he sat, and that's where the player sat on the opposite chair, you know. And they had the conversation. After that conversation, he even said, "You're an honest guy." So he wanted to extract honesty from him, you know. He wanted to extract honesty from him, you know. If he would have sat on his big chair, like Danny Rose would have assumed that you're just you just wants to take advantage of me, you know. What I'm simply saying is simple. Let's say you're talking to a person who is shorter than you. Let's say you're talking to an 8-year-old. You have to swat, right, to be at their level. That's what I'm trying to say. At least at that level, you begin to understand each other. But if you stand like this while this person is down, they feel like they might feel intimidated too, not to air whatever they want to say. So there are limitations to carrying out unstructured interviews needs considerable skill. Like I said, it's quite different from other interviews. So you need to be skilled enough to know where to ask, where to conduct the interview, and how to do it. So the researcher must resist the temptation to influence, encourage, or what? Or interrupt. People will ask. But no questions, some questions are so intrusive. One questions are going to question obvious answer. The answer, like it will be a leading question. They call them leading questions in most cases. Right? Yes. So the researcher by design has little control over the direction of the interview And the conversation may lead into areas that later prove irrelevant to the researcher because there is no control. This is not structured. When you are dealing with a structured interview, you have questions A, B, C, or questions 1, 2, 3. There will be guided questions, like the guided conversation that we do when we are doing O-level English. The guided conversation, you know it. Yes. Guided conversation means you are using the points that are given. But when you are dealing with a unstructured interview, sometimes you might create questions out of the answers. You know, you might ask a person, so how much do you earn from this sexual business? Then they will say, on a good day, we can earn $20 per day. Right? Then you might ask further, what about on a bad day? You know, yes. You have been given information about the good day, then you have been given information about the bad day. Then you ask what they use the money for, you know, after that. Something like that. So that's and sometimes you find out that the questions might pile up and they may end up becoming irrelevant to the yes. When you are an interviewer and a journalist, you must have an agenda. That's the skills that we also learn in O-level English. Yes. When we learn about summary writing. Summary writing is about asking, let's say, write about the causes and effects of that. It's about, we must have a specific guideline, specific points. So when a person is going to interview, they must have like specific guidelines, specific points, so that they won't get like irrelevant information. So reliability is also low because the non-standardized format makes the interview impossible to replicate too. It is difficult to copy. Yes, because also human emotions change. Do you know that you can ask me a certain thing today? This is on a Wednesday. And I can give you a certain answer. And sometimes my answer will be depending on the mood that I'm in. Right? So maybe I might be in a joyous mood, like I'll be in cloud nine, I'll be happy, maybe something triggered my happiness, you know, before you interviewed me. I can give you an answer which is in line with my mood. But next time I might be livid or might be angry or something might have like tempered with my emotions. So I might give you, so you cannot replicate it too, you know. Yes, it's hard to replicate because human emotions are dynamic. Human emotions are always changing. So I was having an argument with these ladies on Facebook, and I was telling them that even the person with whom you say is a good person, is a kind person, we are not robots. We are not programmed to be positive-minded and being cheerful all the time. Sometimes you might anger a person, then they might act according to the anger that you would have triggered in them. That was my point. So sometimes these researches are difficult to replicate. They are difficult to copy. Why? Because human emotions are not constant. They are always changing. How I'm feeling this week might not be how I will be feeling next week. Thank you. So another limitation is that all forms of interviewing are naturally based by interviewer effects, biased by interviewer effects, and respondents may try to please the researcher by telling them what they believe the researcher wants to hear, perhaps influenced by what they know of the interviewer from their interaction. Yes. And that's an issue. Some interviewees might even study the interviewer before they meet, so that they can know the type of question they ask and the type of the type of issues they want to know. So they might have the pre-planned responses, right? The pre-planned responses. The last 10 interviews, let me look into that. How did they answer? How did he ask the question? So it removes that natural flair. It becomes like sort of a scripted interview instead of it being free flowing. Yes, I like. Is it Shannon? He's the one who, that guy was once an NFL player. Used to interview. He interviews celebrities. Yes, it's Shay and what I don't know. I forgot the name, but this guy is an American. what he does, his podcast is like, he has sort of a table, and this side in some sofas, then the other side in some sofas. Then he sets up, like here in Zimbabwe we have voice detoners. Yes, voice detoners, like the recent one with the DJ Towers, and yes, they have voice detoners. Yes, they create an environment whereby they can even, I think even before the interview, they can ask you to know, what do you drink and stuff. They want you to be comfortable. It will be like at bus stop TV, they even called this other guy who was drinking his coat, and they were cooking sadza and mazondo. Then papa don't need chigubu chegutu, so vachitorowa chimwa. Izvozvo zvinoita kuti pave a natural flow. You get what I'm saying? Yes. The person who is being interviewed will be drinking, will be sipping his beer, and will have this casual demeanor, and he will be drinking this beer and he will be telling you everything, So you must create sort of that environment, Right. So we also have semi-structured interviews. This type of interview tries or attempts to combine the strengths of unstructured and unstructured interviews. So it's a combination of unstructured, then what? Semi-structured. So it's a hybrid or the mixture of the two. So researchers feel free to ask questions in any order and to phrase the questions as they think best. So semi-structured interviews, therefore, allow a respondent to talk at length and in depth about a particular subject. The interview is a structure or interview schedule, the areas the interviewer wants to focus on, but there is no list of specific questions. Yes, there is no list of specific questions. So different respondents may be asked about different questions on the same topic, depending on how the interview is developing. And the aim is to understand things from the respondent's viewpoint rather than to what? Rather than to make generalization about what? About the behavior, So open-ended questions are frequently used in semi-structured questions. When we say open-ended questions, it means this type of question will give the one who is answering the room. It is open, like they are asked in a way that you are open enough to express everything. So some of these are created before the interview, while others arise naturally from whatever the respondent wants to talk about. Yes, I think I once explained that. So there might be some areas in which they can ask you a question, then you give you an answer, then they can create a question from the answers that you would have given them. So, what are the strengths? There are no specific questions prepared. There is less risk of the researcher deciding what should be discussed. And where the respondent can talk about things that interest them, it is possible to pick up ideas and information that may not have occurred to the interviewer or of which they had no previous knowledge. So, the new knowledge can be used to inform later interviews with the different respondents and to suggest further questions. So, in this platform, interviewees are given the chance to develop their ideas. The researcher tries to discover what someone really means or thinks or believes, and the focus on issues that the respondent considers important results in a much greater depth. So this may increase the validity of the data. Why and how does it increase the validity of the data? Why should we trust this? It is because the interviewee or the respondent is given much time to air their views. This may increase the validity of the data, as it is more likely that the researcher will achieve its reward, will achieve his or her real aims. But however, it has limitations and disadvantages. Like this method demands certain skills in the researcher. A researcher must be skilled. You cannot just come out of nowhere, then you can ask questions like this. You need a great deal of skill. And one of the skills is asking the rightful what? The rightful questions, which are in line with the topic, establishing a good rapport. When we talk of a good rapport here is a what? A good relationship. Yes, you must have a good relationship with the one you are what? You are inquiring, so that they can be comfortable enough to give you the what? To give you the answers. Right, because if a person feels unwanted, I like this journalist called Trevor McDonald. He moves around in the American high security prisons and he even interviews death row inmates. You know, like one moment he visited the Indiana State Prison. He was so, like, he didn't treat these people, like some of those inmates who were in the death row had committed heinous crimes. Like there's this other guy who killed his wife and 2 children, you know, and they're scheduled to be what? To be executed later on. But he interviewed them in a humane way, you know. Why did he do that? It is because he wanted to gain their trust. He greeted them so well. What do you feel about the crime you committed? Do you have any regrets? You know, like it's sort of a friendly rapport. So this will lead the person who is answering to give you answers, full answers, good answers, and comfortably. Right. So you have to know the right questions and establishing a good rapport and thinking quickly about relevant question opportunities. So you must be someone who is a quick thinker, because this is a on-spot thing. Yes. So semi-structured interviews are not only more time-consuming than questionnaires, but the large amounts of information they produce must also be analyzed and interpreted. That's why I find out that when if it's a podcast, it might take some time, yes. You find out that if some interviews, you might get 6 hours of information. Then they can just give you 45 minutes, you know. Yes, they will get it. So it's laborious. Yes, the editing, the stuff, it might take a week while you're editing. So the data is really tightly focused on a particular topic. So a researcher may spend a lot of time analyzing that data that is little or no use to study. And the respondents must remember and describe past events. And this creates problems for both the researcher and the respondent. While a researcher has no way of knowing whether someone is telling the truth, a further problem is that it may not only be difficult to remember things that have happened months or years ago, but memories can also be selective. We call it selective amnesia, selective memory. When I ask you about something which happened 3 years ago, you might have some details, but you won't be really accurate. Of course, in most cases, there are some events or some incidences which happen in our life and they are never out of our mind for the rest of our lives. But in most cases, we forget some. And we have selective, like memory selection. Let's say you are asked about something, then over time information in English, yes, then you write the best, you tell them the best part. Yes. So respondents only remember those things that seem important to them. Imperfect recall. Yes. So finally, semi-structured interviews lack standardization. They do not have standard. Because when you create another question from another answer, you know, there's lack of coherence here. The same questions are not necessarily put to all respondents, and similar questions may be phrased differently. So this makes analyzing data and generalizing difficult sometimes, yes. So I think next lesson on Friday, we are going to look into group interviews. We'll be continuing. Thank you.